Welcome to the Rock Interview Series with host Thomas S. Orwatt Jr.
Welcome to episode number 51 of the Rock Interview Series. I'm Thomas Orwatt Jr. It is May 25th, 2022, and my guest for this feature is Gil Moore, drummer, vocalist, songwriter, and band leader of the multi-platinum Canadian power trio Triumph. Moore formed Triumph in 1975 along with RIk Emmett on guitar and vocals and Mike Levine on bass and keyboards. The three together were an unstoppable music force that quickly ascended from playing high schools and clubs to play in prestigious theaters and hockey arenas. During the 1980s, Triumph was one of the most popular bands in rock music, playing sold-out shows in front of tens of thousands and selling millions of records. Their hit singles included Magic Power, Hold On, Somebody's Out There, Follow Your Heart, and many more. However, the classic lineup of Triumph came to an unexpected halt on September 3rd, 1988 at Kingswood Music Theatre in Ontario, Canada, when RIk Emmett abruptly left the band after the show. Triumph did reunite 20 years later, but only performed 2 full shows since then. Recently, a documentary entitled Triumph, Rock and Roll Machine was released. This highly entertaining and interesting film chronicles the entire career of Triumph. This is a must-see for any fan of Triumph and rock music. What follows is an exclusive interview with Gil Moore in which he talks about the new documentary, the band's career, future plans, and much, much more. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Rock Interview Series, and this just isn't another episode. We have somebody that I've been wanting to interview for decades now, and here he is right in front of me, Mr. Gil Moore, drummer, songwriter, vocalist, band leader of the legendary band Triumph. Gil, how are you today?
Hey, great, Thomas. Nice to be here.
We're going to discuss your new documentary that's out, Triumph Rock and Roll Machine. And I watched it a couple days ago, and man, it was really outstanding. I mean, I've watched a lot of documentaries, and my only criticism on this one was that it wasn't longer. Because I mean, I wanted to go in so much more detail, but man, what a great story. What a great job they did. It brought me to tears like maybe 5 or 6 times. I mean, it was really great.
Well, the directors, Mark Riccardelli and Sam Dunn, and also the co-director, co-producer, Don Allen, they did a great job on the creative, and really the credit goes to those guys, more so than the band. We were just going along for the ride, but the way they created the narrative and stitched all the footage together and told the story was pretty amazing. We were knocked out ourselves.
Yeah, like I said, even if you're not a fan of the band, I mean, you would find it like really interesting, and it's a great job. And I have to ask you, I mean, it's probably a lot of people are it's interested again in hearing more on Triumph.
Well, it's kind of put together a lot of the old stuff, which brings up a lot of new questions and new perspectives and so on. So, hopefully that's what documentaries do. They get people thinking, and, even the band with us watching it, I mean, we were like viewers, we were like spectators. So, yeah, it sparks a lot of creative juices and gets a lot of conversations started for sure. So it's going to be an interesting couple of years coming up.
Yeah, so this documentary isn't the swan song of Triumph. There's going to be more coming down the pipeline, correct?
Oh yeah, I mean, right now, for example, Michael Klink, great producer, great buddy of ours, probably most famous for his work with Guns N' Roses. He's working on a tribute album, and the tribute album is well on its way. So he has some pretty amazing artists on there. So that's something for later this year or early next year.
Wow, that's incredible. Have you already picked out the artists that are going to be participating?
Well, Mike actually did it all. So, some of the singers, I can tell you, he has Nancy Wilson. I know he was recording her from Halt last week. He has Joey Belladonna from Anthrax singing. Our buddy Sebastian Bach, of course. And our buddy Phil X from Bon Jovi is on there. Mickey Thomas from Starship. Just absolutely great cast of vocalists. Larry from Styx, Just some great guitar players too. Nita Strauss is on there. Drummers, oh my God, don't get me started. Tommy Aldridge and Kenny Aronoff for two that come to mind. So yeah, and there's more that I'm just not mentioning right now, or I can't remember. But Mike is really the master of space and time, and we've just received some updates on what he's doing.
Wow, that's incredible news. Do you have any idea when it may be released?
I'm guessing fourth quarter this year or early next year, but not something that Triumph's in control of, really. It's Roundhill Records and Mike delivering no wine before it's time kind of thing. So we'll have to wait and see, but that's my guess.
That's great. Do you think that there will ever be another Triumph song done by the original band, you, Rick, and Mike?
Well, I think there's a good possibility that something will happen along the way, but it's hard to predict. We weren't planning on playing any music in this film, but the directors decided that they wanted us to do that, and it became part of their story they were trying to tell. So we played 3 tracks in the film, which anybody who's seen it will see those performances. So it was fun to get back up on stage. So you really don't know where it's gonna lead, Thomas. I guess in Triumph land these days, we sort of take it one day at a time. And like a lot of things in life right now, there's just so many things changing quickly, some good, some not so good in the world today. And we just kind of wait and see. Maybe there'll be an opportunity to perform or record something to help in a situation that arises. There seem to be so many bad situations and people in need these days. So that would be something that would probably get the band kick-started.
Yeah, one of the real fascinating things about the documentary, of course there are many, but was seeing Metalworks, the studio, and your warehouse with all the Triumph gear and things. It was just unbelievable. And the super fan event that you had, where you had all these super fans flying from all over the world to come to this event. I was thinking, have you guys thought about maybe like doing that like again, like on maybe even like annually, and doing like a whole week where people can pay like $300 and come down and have that same experience, because that seems pretty incredible. I can't think of any band that's topped that.
Yeah, it was unlike anything I've ever seen as a fan event, because you got to remember, because it was part of the film. It's the film company that staged it. So they built a museum, a Triumph museum that was the size of 2 school buses end to end. That was just phenomenal. It was actually a shame to take it down. It was so much work that went into it, so many people curating it and so on. But yeah, I don't think there's a view to making it annual or anything like that. On the other hand, there's things that are taking on sort of a life of their own. So I know there is a fan event this coming summer, excuse me, in August, up near Ottawa, and it's being staged by a very good friend of the band, and I believe Rick is going to be performing there as part of that little, I'll call it a Triumph festival or a Triumph fan event. So yeah, who knows? It was a lot of fun for us, Thomas. So maybe we should do it every year. I don't know.
It would be awesome. Now, I'm being from Buffalo, New York. I said earlier that I caught on pretty early to Triumph. My first exposure to Triumph was in early December of 1978 when I was watching Saturday Night Live. There was this commercial that came on that I thought was absolutely, that blew my mind. And it was a commercial for Triumph for a concert that was coming up at Kleinhans Music Hall on December 27th. And I watched this commercial, and immediately the next morning, I changed my Christmas list. Number 1 was tickets for this concert, and number 2 was Rock and Roll Machine record. And I'll tell you, when I got both, and I'm very thankful for that. And when I received Rock and Roll Machine on Christmas Eve, I played it nonstop up until the concert, and the concert I was just absolutely blown away by. Now getting back to that commercial, who came up with that idea? That was brilliant. I mean, I didn't see very many bands do that. Maybe Kiss, and Triumph. You won my heart over with that commercial.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting idea, because we didn't want to get frustrated like so many Canadian bands never being able to get across the border and make it happen in America. And it seemed like the only way to do it, first of all, was to be an opening act, which we didn't want to do. And really the kind of the seed of the idea came from George Clinton's band, Parliament and Funkadelic. They had a TV commercial that was before that I happened to catch, and I thought, wow, this is a great idea, TV commercial for a concert, which seemed like the way it struck you was completely bizarre. Like, what's this TV commercial? I felt the same way when I saw that. So when we were doing our very first videos, and we were kind of premature with the videos because we were one of the very, very first bands on MTV. So we just had this sense that doing video was the right thing. And then part of that video shoot, we came up with the idea to shoot a TV commercial, or to edit the videos into a TV commercial, I guess I should say. And we managed to convince RCA Records at the time that it was a great marketing idea. And we just saw it as a shortcut to not having to go out and open for, whoever in America. And the concert promoters in America, just like, Harvey Corky and Tyson Buffalo, they looked at the ad, the same ad you saw. They listened to the publicity guys at RCA Records, and they went, well, let's take a shot. And it worked, because it worked all across America, not everywhere at once, but, gradually, market by market by market, we just kind of managed to get on radio and get a fan base going, and skip the whole, freshman thing of being an opening act altogether.
Yeah, that was my next question. Was Triumph ever an opening act, like even early in your career? Because in the documentary, you guys were pretty much headlining like high schools and that, and so you weren't, were you?
We just never were. We never wanted to do that. I mean, I can remember the two times I think we ever did that, and one time, this is very, very funny. We opened for Comedians, very early stage. But they were great. They were great comedians. I think they were better than any rock band anyway. In a bar when we were getting started. So that was kind of fun. I don't suppose that really counts as opening, but later on we tried it once. We got an offer to do Richfield Coliseum in Cleveland. Billy Squier was actually the opening act. He had a massive hit at the time, and then we were special guests, and Alice Cooper was the headliner. So we went on and we played the show, and I love Alice Cooper. I wanted to watch him. I've always loved Alice, but our segment, our special guest segment, no, we didn't enjoy it. It just felt like we were so into our theatrics and so on, and so was Alice, and like Alice had the whole. It was the Alice show, and we're trying to fit into it somehow in terms of the production. So it just didn't feel right. So we went, never again. So that was the one time. So if anybody attended that show in Cleveland, that was the only time we ever opened for anybody.
Wow. Well, I want to get back to Buffalo, because I for many years thought that Kleinhans show was the very first time you played Buffalo. But digging a little deeper, I found out that you guys used to play clubs in Buffalo, like McVan's and places like that. Were there many gigs in Buffalo at the before that Kleinhans show?
There was just a handful. Like, we played After Dark in Lockport, and we played McVan's. I think maybe once at McVan's. I'm going to say we played After Dark twice as a guest. Yeah, and because of the proximity to Toronto, of course, for us when we were starting out, and we were playing, churches and schools, and all the bingo halls, you name it. It was anywhere we could get somebody to hire us, we would go and play, and that's how we snuck across the border, I guess you would say, into Western New York there. So that was a great it was a great starting point, really.
Yeah, and it wasn't just Buffalo being the big U.S. market. It was actually San Antonio, like they say in the documentary. And a lot of the Triumph fans know this, but you played a headlining gig in San Antonio in a huge arena in January of 1978. I mean, that's incredible. Your very first, was that your first like big arena gig in the United States?
Well, yeah, actually, that was not in an arena. That was in the Municipal Auditorium, which is actually a super large theater. was a 5,500 seat theater, so it was very, very large in terms of theater sizes. But nonetheless, you know, we were not really ready for that. We were really lucky. We got a break when we got that show, and we were just vaulted right into the headline status in the show. And the radio station in San Antonio said, no, you know, you guys can do this. It was originally, it was Sammy Hagar was headlining it this was after Montrose, and you know, Sammy was pretty big down there. And then they had the Runaways with Joan Jett was the special guest. They were quite successful at the time. And Yesterday and Today was from Los Angeles. They were the opening act. Sammy ended up getting an offer to go and open for Kiss at Madison Square. First time Kiss ever played Madison Square. And that's when the promoter contacted us and said, hey, we'd like to just put you guys in. We don't think we're going to refund any tickets. And we went, wow, that's a lot of confidence. That's nice. But he was right. And not only did they hardly refund any tickets, they actually sold the place out clean. And then they put a show in Corpus Christi on sale and a show in Austin on sale while we were there. So we hit all three cities in Texas, and that just kind of lit a fire that you know, it just went out of control. Like within a few years, we were doing the big arenas in Houston and Dallas, and you know, all the secondaries in West Texas, and always had a love affair with that state. And I guess the heart of it was San Antonio. Like I always have a soft spot in my heart for San Antonio. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, something like that must have really given the band a lot of confidence. They go and be able to, like, you know, play like so far away from home and play in front of so many people, and then get additional gigs after that. I mean, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it was a good place to spread from. We had other cities that got onto the band, but they were a long ways from each other. You know, Louisville, Kentucky was one of the very first cities that embraced Triumph. Indianapolis embraced Triumph right out of the gate. You know, as did Buffalo. But you know, it's funny. Buffalo influenced Rochester. Before you know it, you know, Rochester was in the fold, and then you know, Toledo is in the fold, and then as we spread into the Michigan markets, you know, Detroit was. You know, it's a big media market. It's not an easy market for a band to crack, but when we did, you know, all the secondary markets in Michigan, the Grand Rapids and Kalamazoo and Saginaw, you know, great arenas in those cities, and over into Wisconsin, you know, into Green Bay, which is another great rock and roll market, as well as Milwaukee, and then of course down into Chicago. And it's just, you know, it's just like. I guess before the internet and satellite radio and things like that, you know, you were really kind of trying to get a band to bust on a regional basis with, you know, whoever the big AOR station in the market was. And that's why it was a little different back then. It didn't feel so all encompassing. It was more like, you know, you had to kind of conquer one region at a time, I guess you'd say, Thomas.
Yeah. And then you came back home and you played probably like the biggest gig of your career to that point, Maple Leaf Gardens on March 21st. What was that gig like? I mean, that had to be huge for you.
Well, two things. You know, when we came back to Canada, you know, we did Canada Jam, which was the largest outdoor show, you know, at that time in history. It was 110,000 at Mossport Park. It was the same promoters, you know, Lenny Stogel and Sandy Feldman, that did the two big Cal Jams, and that was something else. But the show you're referring to, Maple Leaf Gardens, what made it really special for me was that was the first time my parents, you know, got to come and you know, see that I had a job and it was working out. So, you know, they got the limo ride down and security guards into the stands, and they got to see, you know, 15,000 kids cheering for Triumph. So it was really a great family moment, I'll say.
Back to that Buffalo show that I saw at Kleinhans, I remember that being unique also. I remember the first explosion that went off knocked part of the Triumph sign off, and it was like off like for like of the entire concert. There was a part of the line was off. And also it was the first time I heard somebody like say disco sucks. And I remember you guys were like the pioneers of that. And up until that point, it never crossed my mind. I used to listen to Saturday night fever all the time. And I remember coming home the next day and my parents were playing. And I go, get this off. Disco sucks. And they're like, what's wrong with you? What happened? I saw Triumph yesterday. They said disco sucks.
So I guess we had you convinced.
Yeah, you were right. It does suck. It did suck. Yeah. So it was you. I mean, you guys were pioneers as far as I'm concerned, because that was the first time I heard that. So you guys really, on your second record, you're already like headlining Maple Leaf Gardens, and like, I mean, it must have been pretty incredible. I mean, your plan was a successful plan. It seemed like all three members of the band had like one thing that they were really super good at, and it was a great combination of people in the band that really made this successful, right? Pretty much right from the start.
I think, any of the bands, if I look behind you on the wall there, and I see the Beatles, and I said, well, if Paul and John had not gone to the same art school, the Beatles might never have been. And there's a similar story with Led Zeppelin there on the other poster. And I think you can say the same about almost any band. Almost any band, if they're lucky enough to get a fan base, then there's something in that combination of those people that didn't exist in the other bands they played in, because you can trace all the musicians and you'll find that they all came from these backgrounds where they were just trying to get something going, and they were playing with buddies in their neighborhood, and bands breaking up, and not a lot of great stories. And then suddenly, when they happen to click with the right individuals, then suddenly they had a signature sound that was unique, and that was that launching pad. So we were really fortunate. Mike and I were struggling to find a guitar player, and we had, in our mind's eye, we had a vision of the guitarist, but we hadn't found him. And who knows? We haven't found Rick. We might have just dissolved in frustration. But we did get lucky. We got a tip to go and see this incredible guitar player, and Mike and I went and we saw him. We went, oh, that's our guy. Now we just got to convince him to join the band, which we did. And kind of the rest is history, I guess you'd say.
Well, because of the fact that Triumph rose so quickly to the top, did you find a lot of people were jealous of Triumph? I mean, maybe some opening bands. I know that you had a situation, I remember reading, with John Waite of the Babies, went through a fit, and there was an issue with Bon Scott also, and RIk.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say it was jealousy. I mean, those are funny situations, but yeah, John Waite, for whatever reason, he seemed to get angry that we had so much equipment on stage, and he took his mic stand and he started smashing some of our lights. And we didn't see this. We were back in the dressing room, but our stage manager, went over to his stage manager and he basically said, "You tell your man, if he does that again, it's going to not end well for him." And so his stage manager went over and whispered in his ear, and so he went out and he doubled down on it, and he took his mic stand and he smashed another half a dozen lights. At which point, our stage manager just flew out on stage and clotheslined him and flattened him like a pancake center stage. And the crews went into this crazy melee, and the curtain came down. And the hilarious thing was the curtain stuck when it was about 36 inches off the deck. So all you could see was all these legs and fists flying. And it didn't end well for John Waite. The Bon Scott one was, bless his soul, love Bon Scott singing. He just heard some crazy rumor backstage that I don't think was true, but they were AC/DC was opening for us at Kiel Auditorium in St. Louis, and our fans were real hardcore there. And anyway, he came back to our dressing room thinking that somehow Rick had said something that dissed him or something. I don't really know why he was so upset. And he was a few sheets to the wind at the same time. So fortunately, we were able to. His road manager at the time is a pretty level-headed guy, and he and I sort of talked Vaughan off the ledge, so to speak.
Wow,
But,
that's incredible.
yeah, yeah,
back-
funny stuff. You know, you got to remember, they're all young guys, a lot of testosterone flowing, and you know, at those times. So, you know, some of these things kind of happen. It's like professional sports. Every now and then somebody gets cross-checked or somebody gets tripped or whatever. It's the same thing in rock and roll, really.
Yeah, back then, I mean, rock and roll, I mean, it's always been known to have a lot of drugs and alcohol involved in it. Did you or any of the other members of Triumph ever struggle with either drugs or alcohol, you know, at any time?
No. No, we were. I mean, you know, we had fun, but it was impossible with a trio that's a power trio that's playing so much up-tempo music, and all the vocals were high, just for lack of a better definition. It was like you had to be an athlete to play in Triumph.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I've seen you know, several shows, and the next time you played Buffalo, you played the same music hall, Kleinhans Music Hall, but this time you played it twice and sold out both shows, and that was on the Just a Game tour.
Yeah, that was the last time we played Kleinhans, and then I think we started playing Memorial Auditorium after that.
Yeah,
And,
Progressions
that
of
was-
Power.
Yeah, exactly. You've got a great memory, Thomas.
I have a lot of notes in front of me too, but yeah, no,
Good for you.
I do remember that. And I like I say, I remember, you know, bits. I could tell you like the weather for like every single one of these shows too. I remember they were such a big part of my life. Progressions of Power, and this was something that wasn't really mentioned in the documentary at all, but I thought that was an amazing like arena rock record.
Yeah, we decided we were going to sort of record a little more live off the floor for that record, and we recorded the drums with I think only 4, maybe 5 microphones. So there was intentionally a lot of bleed, and the, you know, the sort of the rawness of that record was a lot less refined, let's say, than Just a Game, and it was kind of a direction that we just wanted to go in, and you know, it just led to more experiences in the studio and more you know, ideas about how to make our sound hopefully progress with each record. We had a ball making Progressions of Power, and you know, Island for the Weekend became one of those tracks that just sort of lived on radio, you know, every Friday, you know, for many years because of the title too. You know, it's everybody wants to think about that. Yeah, getting out of work on Friday.
Yeah, that's definitely an anthem. And then follow up the next song, I Can Survive, is another. I mean, that's a great 1-2 punch.
Yeah, that song, we played it live for a little while, and then we kind of gave up playing it live. It didn't become part of our set for much, you know, after that tour. But you know, we still get a lot of fan requests for that song. You're right.
Yeah, now at that point you were, you know, pretty much solidified as an arena rock band. Were you playing arenas like pretty much all through America or the United States?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, you know, we'd managed to. I mean, there was there were a few regions where there wasn't a lot of album radio. You know, mainly in the Southeast. You know, like the Carolinas, for example, was pretty much a pop market. But the rest of the United States, you know, we had solid radio, basically. You know, pretty much everywhere.
Mm-hmm. And then the next year, in 1981, Allied Forces came out, and that was a mega record. I remember at that point, everybody in junior high was a Triumph fan. I mean, I was the first one to wear the Triumph shirt in 1978, which I bought for $6 at Kleinhans. And at that point, everybody had Triumph shirts on.
Yeah, they were pretty cheap back then.
Yeah, so were concert tickets too. I have my
I
concert
know.
ticket from Triumph right here. That show, it was $6.50.
Yeah, it's hard to believe when you look at ticket prices now. What would that be? $65 or $165? I don't know which, but it'd be a lot of money.
Well, if I could go back in time, I would pay like $1,000 to see that concert again. That Buffalo show that Kleinhans won. I still have the review.
Wow.
And the headline is Triumph teaches a lesson in rock, dancing, and musicianship.
Huh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't remember dancing that much, but I mean,
I
whatever.
don't know about dancing either. And I know the press didn't always love us. We got a lot of negative reviews too, but nice
Well,
to hear a good one.
yeah, they had to be idiots because I mean, Triumph was a band. There's bands like I've said this before. I saw Van Halen in 1980, and I loved Van Halen, but their shows, I mean, kind of sucked. I mean, musically, they kind of sucked, and I think a lot of it was because they were drunk or high or whatever. And Triumph was always spot on.
Well, I mean, it gets back to the sort of what I was saying earlier about it, the athletic nature of what we were doing. I mean, I know as a drummer, like having to sing as well as play drums is it takes a lot out of you, and you've got to have your wits about you, and you've got to get a good night's sleep. So and RIk Emmett, like, what can you say? I mean, how high does that guy sing? And then Mike had to contend with both of us. So all the way around, I mean, we worked hard on stage, and we just realized when we went out, we didn't go out with the idea, like, there was never ever a show that anyone can ever point to where we come on stage drunk and put on a terrible show. Like, we came out fighting every single time we walked on stage, like from the first show we played till the very last show we played. Never ever changed that. And it's because we felt like, I think we felt at that time, and still do, very grateful to have fans. And it's just disrespectful, I think, for a band to come on stage bombed and make a mess of the show and think that it's okay because they're rock stars and they can do that. I don't have any respect for that.
Yeah. Getting back to the timeline, then in 1982, Never Surrender was released, and I, as a fan, thought you guys could never top Allied Forces, but I thought Never Surrender was a really good, solid record, and I loved it.
Yeah, I liked the record myself. I liked the song Never Surrender in particular. It got kind of a reggae feel in it, and Mike was always he had a second home in Jamaica, so he was a huge Bob Marley fan. And I thought, yeah, there's no way, Mike, there's no way Triumph's ever going to do anything that has like a reggae beat or whatever. And then when we started working on that riff, and I realized, hey, wait a minute, this is kind of a reggae beat, isn't it? And I didn't even intend it, or I wasn't even aware of it. It's just how it evolved in our jams, on the riff. So that was kind of a one-off, I think.
Yeah, that was one of the things I always found fascinating about Triumph, was the fact that you guys were pretty musically diverse. I mean, especially Rick with his like jazz guitar and classical guitar. I mean, even myself as like a 13-year-old, I mean, felt that was really cool.
Yeah, Rick was always, pushing the band into new directions, and Mike is you got to give Mike credit. He's a great producer, and when the band started, Mike was a producer. As we progressed and we worked with other engineers and other producers, and some famous ones like Eddie Kramer, David Thoner, Mike Klink, these guys are great producers, but Mike never really took off the producer hat. So even if you had someone as great as Mike or Eddie or in the chair, Mike was always co-piloting if he wasn't piloting. So that's what pushed the band, I think, into a lot of different diverse sort of corners of the musical spectrum. And yeah, Rick, he's kind of, I look at Rick as a sort of a master musician. He's one of those guys that just studies all kinds of things, and he just surprises you. You'd be in the dressing room one day, and all of a sudden he'll pop off this lick, and you'll go, wow, what's that? What's that sequence you're playing, or what's that? Where's that headed? And so he's a very creative guy.
Yeah.
We all drummers aren't musicians, so I had nothing to do with this. So.
Yeah, right. One of the other highlights that happened soon after the release of that was you played the US Festival, which was just like a legendary show. What was that like? I mean, of course they mentioned this in the documentary, but is there anything else you can add to what you mentioned there about that particular festival?
Well, I guess for us, it was a kind of a watershed moment. I mean, we had played the Tangerine Bowl in Orlando the day before with ZZ Top, and we that was a huge festival there. We thought, wow, there was 55,000 at the T-Bowl, and the next day we're going to this other gig. So I mean, it wasn't like we played a church basement the day before we played the US Festival, but there's nothing that prepares you for the sight of that mass of people. Like when we flew in on a helicopter, which is the only way to get in, and when you look down and you see, it's a sea, it looks like a sea of ants. And I'll never forget that, the scope, I guess I'll say, of that outdoor venue.
Yeah, was there a lot of interaction with the other bands backstage in that? I mean, I imagine it being like one huge party. Was it like that at all, or did you just pretty much stick to yourself?
No, we stuck to ourselves. I mean, again, it's back to what I said about, trying to be ready. We knew we had a big task ahead of us. We knew it was super hot. And, I remember, standing in our trailer and Judas Priest, walk past and I see Rob and the boys. They're all decked out in the leathers, black leathers. And, Rob's got his big coat on and everything. And I'm looking at that, I'm going, you guys are going to melt. You're going to melt like an ice cream cone, because it must have been, it was 100 degrees and counting. It was so hot, and it was full sun. And, we got teased about, wearing kind of light clothes, like kind of white colored clothes and so on. And, in the film, there's a kind of a quip about that, but we were looking at it again, like we got to get through this show and not miss a beat. And we've got to do it in this scorching heat at full warp 11 speed, boom, from the outset, no excuses, take no prisoners approach. And if we'd gone on stage, like I said, like I don't know, I'm not going to criticize other bands that are bombed when they play. I don't know how they do it. It was never Triumph's thing.
Yeah. And then Thunder 7 was the next record with Follow Your Heart and Spellbound as singles. What comes to mind when you think about that particular record?
I think that the recording in LA for the first time was not a great experience. And I think we realized, Metalworks was our home. And so we didn't do too much in Los Angeles on that record, but we made the Spellbound video, down there in the desert, and that was kind of odd, because that was the first time that we were never on the set, so we never saw the guy in the car, we never saw the girl, never saw any of that. We got filmed in a soundstage in LA. And the videos put together after the fact with all this other footage. So that was a kind of a big change for us, because most of our videos had been live videos, and the only time we did a concept video prior to that was on Allied Forces, when we did Allied Forces and Magic Power in a concept, and it was a disaster. It was the worst video we ever did. We hated it. We just made jokes about it. We told the record company, don't you dare put that on MTV. We hate it, but of course you can't hold those things back, so it just became one of those funny things where we look at it now and we go, okay, so, we look like goofballs in that video, but what's wrong with looking like a goofball once in a while? Rock and roll is supposed to be fun. The Rolling Stones approach it that way, and they're the oldest and the greatest. So if they can have fun with it, I guess anybody else can too.
Yeah, and then the next release was Sport of Kings, and that had a huge hit, Somebody's Out There. And was it around that time that you guys added a guitarist to play on stage with you?
Yeah, we brought out Rick Sanders, who's a great musician from Toronto and great vocalist, and was really, the idea was we some of the records that stage, we filled them out a little bit more. So they weren't quite as power trio-ish as some of the earlier recordings. So we decided, hey, you know what? Let's try something different. We don't have to be, the same. And so we came out with Rick sort of doing backing guitars and some extra keyboards behind Mike, and worked out very well. He fit in really well with the band on a personality basis. He's a wonderful guy, and he's a great musician. And he kind of hung out towards, more upstage. So I felt like he was kind of closer to me. Mike and Rick are sort of my flankers up here, like a couple of halfbacks or something, but I've got this defensive tackle to my left. So we made a lot of eye contact when we played, and we enjoyed hanging on the road as well.
Yeah, he has some great moments on stage too. I mean, he took the spotlight and did some really awesome solos with him and Rick would, counter one another. I mean, I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, we had one night in Michigan where Rick got sick and couldn't play, and RIk Emmett got sick, and Rick Sanders just took over, and we played the show without RIk Emmett.
Wow.
There's a very rare occasion, but that shows the level of his talent that he was able to do that.
Yeah, the next record was Surveillance in 1987, and that was kind of like the beginning of the end, right? For the band for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, we were getting into different headspaces as individuals, and there were different things going on in our lives at the time, and sometimes history needs to take its course, and it did at that point in time. And yeah, we had some bad feelings, but we got over them, and we're brothers again in the future. So, every family, I guess, now and then maybe has an argument or a fight, and that was ours. And we got over it, and we're brothers in arms again, and look back on the career with no regrets. Honestly, Thomas, like for me, I wanted to raise a family in Toronto and not be living in a hotel. My mom was elderly and had been widowed, and I wanted to support her. And I was always a behind the scenes guy anyway. So the recording studio it was a magnet for me. And, so I think it's good for all of us how it's worked out, and when we get together, I'll tell you, there's a lot of laughter.
Yeah.
A lot of fun when Mike, Rick, and Gil get together. There's never a dull moment, I can assure you.
Yeah, back to your studio, Metalworks. You've had so many legendary artists record there. I know that the Buffalo band, the Goo Goo Dolls, actually worked there for, I think, Superstar Car Wash.
Yeah, we've had tremendous number of international artists that have come through. From David Bowie to Prince, and as you mentioned, the Goo Goo Dolls, and we've had some just fantastic recordings. Like I got to see. A few of my heroes come through there too. Ian Gillan came through and recorded Smoke on the Water at Metalworks a second time. Never thought I'd see that. Our buddies in Rush were through the studio, and now, like the big hip hoppers, Drake has just been knocking it out of the park right across the world, and did a lot of recording as he was getting going at Metalworks, and it's just been a great ride in the studio, honestly.
The very last concert that you played, well, it wasn't the last concert because Triumph got together in 2008 and played a couple of shows, but the last one you played on September 3rd, 1988, in Kingswood, Ontario, Kingswood Amphitheater, I think it was called. Did you know that Rick was planning on leaving after that show?
No, we didn't. No, we found out when we read it in the newspaper, but it was, there was just a feeling that we played some shows around that time, but we weren't really, how can I say it? We'd sort of lost our way, I guess is the best. Sometimes a sports team loses their way, and that's kind of where we were. We'd lost whatever the direction and the momentum we had. So it wasn't a great vibe. That's one of those shows I just as soon forget, even though I've talked to people that were there and they said it was a good show. And I said, well, okay, it was a good show if you're in the audience. It wasn't such a good show if you were on stage. But yeah, it's again, part of history. Yeah, and you're right, it's in the film, so it's all there for people to see.
Gil, do you feel that you guys if you just had a little bit of a break maybe at that point, maybe you could have came back together and continued? Because I mean, you put out a lot of music and did a lot of touring in like 10 years. It's incredible. You never took a break.
Yeah, I mean, we should have taken a break. I mean, it's a really good point. And if we had had a manager at that time, which we didn't, any manager would have talked us off the ledge and said, you guys just need to, cool it. You go into one corner, you go into another, take a year off, and let's get together and rehearse and see if we can get the fire started again. But that didn't happen. And as I said, it was a different time for each one of us for different reasons. So it's just one of those things, you just can't rewrite history. But to your point, if we had taken a year off, would that have made us want to continue at that point? I don't, in my case, speaking for myself, I would say no. You know, we did go back in the studio, as you know, in 92 with Phil X, who, again, I've been blessed to play with RIk Emmett, who's one of the best guitar players on planet Earth. And Phil X is also one of the best guitar players on planet Earth. So I've been very lucky. So, but even working with Phil, like, we felt like, or I felt personally like, no, this isn't what I want to do with my life right now. I don't want to go back out and tour. And, you know, I need to be here. I need to be with my family. My family really trumps triumph is really what it amounts to. So it's a change in your life that just feels, to me at least at the time, like the right thing. I get the fact that a lot of our contemporaries, you know, the Iron Maidens and so on, and the AC/DCs, they just kept going and going and going and going. And you know, God bless them. They're great. They're great bands, and their work ethic to keep doing it, and their motivation to keep doing it is very, very admirable. There's nothing right or wrong about whether you want to do that or whether you decide it's you know, it's like a fighter wanting to get out of the ring at a certain point. I guess I was that guy that wanted to get out of the ring. No regrets, I can tell you that.
Yeah, the thing with, you know, all those bands, pretty much every single legendary band has some kind of speed bump that you know, derailed them for a little while, but then they got back on. And Triumph just, like, you know, just went off the cliff. You know, and it's unfortunate, but I mean, you know, you guys went on in a blaze of glory, that's for sure.
Well, you know, honestly, Thomas, I mean, I guess when you say it's unfortunate, and some people, I think, feel that way, and rightly so. Like, if I was a fan of the band, I would probably feel that way. But I can tell you that I think from the Mike, Rick, and Gil point of view, I think it just was the right outcome. It was like, you know, maybe it was because the rocket ship that we were riding on was traveling at such a high rate of speed or whatever, that, you know, it just couldn't be sustained or something. I'm not exactly sure. I just know that the outcome, I think, was the right one. And maybe that's the mystery of Triumph, is the fact that, you know, we seemingly vaporized overnight, you know, after a big tour. But yeah, I just can't say it enough. I have no regrets on how things have worked out. And, you know, I wouldn't trade the time I was able to spend in Toronto, you know, with my wife and kids and my mother after my father passed. I wouldn't trade that time for anything. And being in a hotel, you know, thousands of miles away, no thanks.
Yeah. Well, Gil, I want to thank you very much for your time for this interview. It was great to finally interview you, and thank you very much for your answers. I mean, very fascinating stuff. Although you're not really on the road and touring, I still feel like Triumph's back. I feel like, you know, you're still active, and I have Triumph back again. I might not see you in concert again, but we're getting great stuff coming from you.
Well, I can't wait. We are back, Thomas. Yeah. You're right. I mean, you know, with doing this film, for example, it was a labor of love, and, you know, we were able to do it in Toronto. And, you know, don't forget, I mean, we did have those 2 shows we played in 2008 was a way for Mike and Rick and I to go, okay, we want to let our kids see what we did, or what we're doing, or whatever. You know, we wanted to get the families together and see the big stage. And we were able to do that at Sweden Rock. And then we were able to do it at Rocklahoma. And also it was a hang for the 3 of us, because we hadn't been on stage for so long. And we wanted to be able to, you know, just go, okay, let's go back out and do it. So we could have just teed it up right then and just kept that tour going, and just booked you know, our agent was like, come on, bring it on, boys. I'll just keep booking shows. But you can see that at that time, that was not in the cards. That was not what we wanted to do either. So I think we were kind of lucky the way things, you know, worked out for us as individuals, I'll say. And we're really incredibly grateful to the fans who stuck with us through all of this. And you can just see it when, you know, when this film came out, or you know, when the box set was released, the Allied Forces box set, which was released this year, and you just see what goes on with everybody. The Heavy Metal Hall of Fame induction this year, and last year Canada's Walk of Fame and the Canadian Music Walk of Fame before that, and all those things. It's phenomenal relationship we have with our fans, and they've just made us feel like I don't know, better than I ever thought I could feel in my life. You know, it's just phenomenal to have fans like the Triumph fans.
Yeah, and I'll leave the interview by saying the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame better be next, because if not, then there's.
Well, you can put the fix in.
I wish I could, but I mean, I know there's enough people like Eddie Trunk, for instance. I know that he's a big supporter of that, and you guys absolutely deserve to be in there. There's no doubt.
Yeah, I was with Eddie last week. Yeah, we had a great time. Yeah.
Yeah, great. All right, well, I'm going to stop the interview right now. I know that you're real busy, and thanks again, and maybe we can do a part 2 one of these days. I hope we can.
Yeah, anytime you want, Thomas. It was really great speaking with you,
Okay.
and thanks for the great support that you've shown us over the years. I really appreciate that. On behalf of Mike and Rick, so thank you.
All right, Gil. Well, thank you very much. It was an honor.
Buddy.
All right, we'll see you. Bye-bye.
Take care.